Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Well, it is a privilege to stand and take a call and to support the New Zealand Mission Trust Board Otamataha Empowering Bill in the second reading. I hear that from quite a few of my colleagues here in the House that bills like this, as well as the bills around the treaty settlements, is a really good reminder of our history. And I would say that the member that brought this bill to the House, Te Ururo Flavel, would be very well placed to understand that a lot of our history in terms of Māori and Pākehā interaction wasn't taught in our schools, whether they be mainstream schools or like the one that Mr. Flavel taught in St. Stephen's. And interestingly, schools like St. Stephen's and Queen Victoria and Te Aute were a result of the relationship, hukarere, well too, were a result of the relationship that the churches had with Māori. And I hear what my colleague Catherine Delahunty had said, that in those days, although they may have had very real and genuine desire to contribute in a Christian fashion to the people that they came to deal with and meet with, going forward and in this very modern contemporary times, it is perhaps now seen to be fundamentally, and I think my colleague used the word racist, and that's with benefit of hindsight. However, having said that, it is bills like this that can redress those types of issues, and the treaty bills as well too can address some of those indiscretions and discrepancies. So this bill will transfer land in tauranga and other property from the New Zealand Mission Trust to the Otamataha Trust so that it can be used for the beneficiaries of that trust, and they being the hapu of Ngāti Tapu and Ngai Tamarawaho. The return of the land is highly significant to that hapu of Ngāti Tapu and Ngai Tamarawaho, because, according to them, it re-establishes their connection to the water. It provides income to the hapu to finance other activities, including allowing hapu to participate in the downtown economy of Tauranga. And I think that that's one of the significant features of this bill, and also other settlements, is about the social and economic development of the hapu and the iwi in which they are placed. The bill also comes as around the same time as the 150th anniversary of Gate Pa, as we have heard from our colleagues, and that is significant as well to the introduction of the bill and that auspicious occasion. The Otamataha Trust has been established by the hapu of Ngāti Tapu and Ngai Tamarawaho, as we've heard, to own and manage the land and other property acquired through historical common interests of those hapu in Tauranga. It is not a charitable trust, as my colleague, the Honourable Tau Henare, had mentioned earlier. The bill declares the new trustees to be a leasing authority for the purposes of the Public Body Leases Act of '69. The land being transferred will be subject to a lease granted under that Act, and this allows the transfer to happen without affecting the lease and leasee rights. I think that's very important to note that as part of the technicality of the bill. The Church Missionary Society, or the CMS, was established, as we'd heard earlier as well too, in Tauranga in 1835, and several years later the CMS brought the 2 blocks from Tangata Whenua on the site, which is where the city of Tauranga now stands today. That transaction was never accepted by Tangata Whenua as a sale of the land to the CMS. In 1867, the Crown acquired by the gifting of the CMS 4/5 of that land, which had been vested in the CMS by Crown grant in 1852, and military settlers were settled on it. This land was surrounded by confiscated Māori land on which was also settled. And again, I want to raise these issues because that is part of not just Tauranga Moana's history or Māori history, but that's part of New Zealand history that should be forever mentioned and put in the books so that we can refer back to that in future years. At that same time, in 1896, the remaining land, including Otamataha, was transferred from CMS to the New Zealand Mission Trust Board, which held the assets of the board on trust for the spiritual benefit and spiritual instruction of Māori in the North Island, or failing that, the evangelisation of heathen races, as we had heard earlier, in any part of the world. Alongside that, and around about the same time, of course, we saw a lot of the sons of our rangatira being shipped to or travelled to Poihākena and Sydney in Australia, where they worked in the market gardens to be trained in horticulture by Samuel Marsden. So in terms of the global thought and reach, Māori saw the missionaries as a conduit or a platform to reach out globally as well too, and the CMS was one of those vehicles in which they could see the possibility of global exports. So even back in those very early days, we could see that Māori were very entrepreneurial in terms of trading internationally. Coming forward to today, in 1996, the New Zealand Mission Trust Board handed back control of the land to the new trustees appointed by Ngāti Tapu and Ngai Tamarawaho, and this was done in recognition of the manner and process by which the land was originally acquired from tangata whenua. The land involved is the 7,863 square metre waterfront site the Trinity Wharf Hotel sits on currently, and the Trust collects the ground rent from that hotel. Though the new trustees had control of the land, they're still obliged to use the money and investments derived from that land for the spiritual benefit and spiritual instruction of Māori in the North Island, or failing that, the evangelisation of heathen races in any part of the world. And that will probably be an ongoing discussion point for the tangata whenua, no doubt. It's always been the intention of the two trusts that it be changed so that the two hapu can benefit from it. However, the conditions can't be changed by any other way than through new legislation. A similar issue arose in 1986 with money investments derived from land held by the New Zealand Mission Trust in Port Waikato. This was transferred to Ngāti Kawera and Ngāti Tahinga, and the result was the New Zealand Mission Trust Board Port Waikato Maratai Empowering Act of 1986. The return of the land is highly significant, as we have all discussed. And well, no, I think if you listen very carefully that I have... Well, thank you very much for listening to me as well too. Well, it's wonderful that my colleague in the House is actually listening to me. Kia ora for that. And so I think that it is very pertinent, though, to emphasise that these hapu are saying that the return of these lands are highly significant, and each and every one of us understands that and fully appreciates that. But I do think that it is incumbent upon us to reiterate the significance of the return of those lands, not just spiritually, but also economically as well too. So while we may find that to some in the House that economic development for Māori, by Māori, might be an anathema to them. In actual fact, economic development is part and parcel of the social and spiritual development of iwi going forward, and this bill is one such bill that achieves that. So I commend this bill, Mr Speaker, to the House.
Called Meka Whaiteri.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker.